So pleased to welcome back Chairman Mike
There's no failure in sports.
Gallagher, who comes from Wisconsin, where, as we all know, there is no.
There's no failure in sports.
And that's really a comfort because, Congressman, the Brewers aren't in first place, the Guardians are. So at the All-Star break, I want you to know that's spreading throughout Wisconsin. It's impacting all of your franchises.
Well, good thing there's no failure in sports, Hugh. We can all comfort ourselves with that fact.
Now, you are going to have a hearing. The Select Committee on Engagement with the Chinese Communist Party is going to have a hearing. And I'm very much looking forward to this because they are pursuing dissidents in the United States. Tell us about this.
Well, we are having a roundtable today on the CCP's war on religious freedom. They are not only pursuing members of the dissident community in the United States within China, they're doing things like rewriting the Bible. For example, in the Gospel of John, when Jesus famously defends a woman caught committing adultery against her accusers, he says the famous words, "Let he among you without sin cast the first stone." This is a beautiful story of forgiveness and mercy. But in the CCP approved version of the Bible, you can call it a Bible with socialist characteristics, they rewrite the story to say that Jesus does not defend the woman, and Jesus himself stones the adulterous woman to death because they view this as a story of someone challenging earthly authority, which is a threat to the regime itself. And it goes just to show you the lengths they will go in order to stamp out anything that they view as a threat to the regime. Christians are being persecuted. Obviously, there's an ongoing genocide of Uyghur Muslims. The Tibetan community faces, in some ways, an existential threat as they seek to stamp out their culture and their religion. So we're getting a variety of religious leaders together from many different faiths in order to discuss the CCP's ongoing war against religion today.
Well, as a Roman Catholic, and we share our denominational affiliation, is there anyone showing up from the Catholic Church? Because Pope Francis did the worst deal of his tenure with Chi-Coms.
I regret to say I reached out to no fewer than 3 cardinals and members of the Catholic Church, and none responded. I don't know if that's just they didn't get my message or there's something bigger going on. I've been concerned about that deal that was made, and I hope to have more Catholic voices in the future speaking out about what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. So right now, that's kind of the biggest gap in our participation. We do have some great people coming, like Pastor Bob Roberts, who's the president for the Institute for Global Engagement and co-founder of the Multi-Faith Networks. We have other people like David Curry, who's the commissioner for the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, a variety of people represented, but I regret to say no high-level official from the Catholic Church right now. It's not too late to come if a local cardinal
Did Cardinal Gregory decline? He is the Cardinal of D.C. and the guy who ought to be there.
I reached out personally. I did not hear back. Again, I don't want to ascribe any malicious intent. It could just be that it got, it fell through the cracks in terms of the invitation. But we certainly would love to have him if he can make it.
Maybe you can get Archbishop Chaput out of retirement to come down. The trouble is, and I want to be very candid with the audience, Pope Francis has entered into a terrible deal for the Catholic Church in China that has effectively defenestrated the Catholic Church in China. They extended it. China has violated it. And everybody's embarrassed, but they're also afraid of Francis. So they won't speak up. And he doesn't really know what he's doing there. And it's a disaster for the Catholic Church. But let's focus on the people who are coming. Are there any house churches left? I know the Falun Gong, which is something of a cult, but it's been completely persecuted. And you get to be a cult in the United States, even unless you're hurting people, but not in China, right? They've completely shut those people down.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing for your listeners to understand is that when we talk about religious persecution in China, traditionally we talk about the Uyghurs because that's, of course, the most sort of prominent and in some ways grotesque example of the lengths to which the CCP will go to stamp out a particular faith, and in that case, an ethnic minority as well. But it's happening across the board, from the Falun Gong to Christians. I mentioned the Tibetans before, and we're just hoping to get a wide range of voices to discuss this phenomenon that I think is underappreciated. So, for example, we're going to welcome Pastor Pan Young-gon to Washington, D.C., alongside a bunch of American religious leaders. This is Pastor Pan's first public-facing event in D.C. following his church members' escape from government persecution in China and asylum that he subsequently received in the United States. And again, I think the core point here is for people to understand the extent to which the CCP views various religious sects as a threat to their dictatorial rule. And all the more reason why the United States needs to be a strong voice for religious freedom and speak out on behalf of those that are constantly persecuted by the increasingly paranoid Chinese Communist Party.
You know, your friend of mine, Senator Cotton, was on with Brett Baer the other day saying that artificial intelligence is a race, an arms race that we cannot lose. All right, we have to win that. One of the things I can see the Chinese comms, the Chi-Com's doing is rewriting the scripture to insert the party in the place of Jesus and the party. And they'll use AI to do that. And they are absolutely in the race to rewrite history and to rewrite everything. Does everyone understand how absolutely Orwellian it is, what they're doing?
I don't. I think there's a tendency among the business community and the financial community to either ignore this or wish it away, or think that our investments in key technology in China are innocuous, when of course they're being used to perfect this surveillance state that I think would make Orwell blush. On the issue of AI, Hugh, I'm also excited to be doing a Twitter Spaces discussion with Representative Ro Khanna and Elon Musk later today, where we're going to discuss both the promise and as well as the risks of AI. Elon is one of the most prominent voices out there saying we need to pause, and we want to have a robust discussion of whether a pause would be practical, whether a pause would actually advantage the Chinese Communist Party. It's important that we win this competition, just given the implications of AI, not only for our military, but for humanity itself. But I'm absolutely concerned about the way in which the Chinese Communist Party would wield this technology to further their purpose of perfecting a surveillance state, which would not, in my opinion, stay confined to the borders of China, but would be a model that they would export around the world.
You know, that pause thing gives me great pause. If we had paused on the Manhattan Project, we would not have gotten there in time, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans would have died in going ashore in Tokyo and in the islands of Japan. So I don't want to pause. I want visibility into what they're doing. What time is your Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk?
It is tonight at 7 Eastern.
Okay, I have 2 requests for that. Can you put in 2 requests for me?
Mm-hmm.
You got a pen handy?
I got it in my ear right here, Hugh.
All right, number 1, is there losing in sports? Would you ask Elon Musk that? Is that possible?
Yes.
Is there losing in sports? Because on the one hand, all of Wisconsin says no, but I want to know what Elon Musk. And then secondly, I've interviewed Peter Thiel on this program. I've interviewed Mark Zuckerberg on this program. Will he appear as a guest on the Hugh Hewitt Show, the most informative and absolutely stellar radio show in the United States, and on the Salem News Channel? Would you relay that to me for him, please? Yeah. Both you and Ro have been on it, so you can both speak to how classy and comprehensive the program is.
I agree with that, but it begs the question, Hugh, if I am your de facto booking agent, what precisely does Dwayne do for this enterprise? Why do I have
nothing? Dwayne's not even in the studio today. He's in Tennessee. I was just talking to Marsha Blackburn. Dwayne is on vacation. Not that that should surprise you, but he's on vacation, so nothing. So you're doing it all. But I'll do it at his convenience. We don't need Dwayne. In fact, it'll probably work better if we don't have Dwayne. Let me go back to the Chi-Coms and surveillance in the United States, because I have a new column at the Washington Post about what Putin will do if he wins in Ukraine. Let me ask you that first. What do you think Putin would do to the Ukrainian people if he occupied the entire country, executed Zelensky and the government? What do you think Putin would do?
I actually think it ties to what we were saying before. I think he would turn to his senior partner, his sugar daddy, Xi Jinping, and asked for his assistance in utterly suppressing the people of Ukraine. All of the best technology that would serve that purpose, whatever arms that they would need, anything they would need to do to stamp out any dissent from the Ukrainian people. It would be an absolute humanitarian tragedy. It would be a tragedy for freedom internationally. All the more reason why I think the bravery that the Ukrainians are displaying every day and the innovation they're displaying every day on the battlefield is something that's worthy of clinical and targeted support. And the second thing he would do is start to plan ways in which he could destabilize the NATO alliance. And I think that was really the primary risk of the war in Ukraine is what it would mean for NATO more broadly, in addition to just the tragedy on the ground of Ukraine itself. We know that Putin views NATO as an extreme, if not existential threat, and that he views the collapse of the Soviet Union as the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. So I think there's no question that A, he would seek all the help he could get in oppressing the Ukrainian people, and B, use a victory in Ukraine to destabilize the NATO alliance going forward.
Last question, Congressman Gallagher. Did the Republicans who are against aid to Ukraine, did they think in terms of what is foreseeable in the country? Not whether or not NATO goes to war, but just what Putin will do. And are they comfortable with that?
I wouldn't say they're comfortable with that, Hugh. I think it's really a question of ensuring that the aid we provide is well spent, that there's oversight of that aid. We've passed a variety of oversight laws. We have an inspector general examining that aid and making sure that we are understanding the fragility of our munitions industrial base so that we don't find ourselves depleting critical stockpiles that we need not only for ourselves, but we need in Taiwan. But I think we have an opportunity to ensure that we rebuild our munitions industrial base to provide support to the Ukrainians, as well as deter a war in Taiwan, make sure that Taiwan's future does not become Ukraine's present does not become Taiwan's future.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, though you come from a state indifferent to winning, and don't forget those two questions for Elon Musk tonight. Is there losing in sports? And will he come on the Hugh Hewitt show? Thank you, Congressman Gallagher. Have a good Twitter space to say hello to Rokana for me. Go Guardians, first place Guardians, and you keep trying, Brewers.